Hello and welcome to Comic Books This Week with Dr. Stanford Carpenter and myself, Hannibal Tabu, the head comics reviewer at bleedingcool.com. We appreciate you joining us. These reviews are for books that came out on February 9th, 2022. And at my side, as always, is the illustrious and complicated Dr. Stanford Carpenter. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing fine. Just loving the weather.
I don't know many people in Chicago who would say that sentence, so sure. All right, why not? Anyway.
Hey, it was like 40. It hit almost 40 degrees today. That's in Chicago. That's thong weather. That's bare feet and thongs.
Da-da-da-da. Okay, if that's the way y'all get down, then I will move on from that horrifying thought with the actual comics we're here to do. We are going to look at some of the comics that came out this week, and it looks like you want to talk about some. Always looking into the past. The title says Comic Books This Week, not Comic Books Last Week. But we'll see what we're going to talk about today. Where would you like to begin in our reviewing journey, Stanford?
We'll start with DC Comics.
Okay.
Let's start with Superman, Son of Kal-El.
Okay.
I know on the list I put 7 and 8, and that's just because I picked them up at the same time and decided to read them both at the same time. But we're really talking more about 8. 7 was just kind of like it was the appetizer.
Indeed, like a little amuse bouche, indeed. But 8 is where you actually got to the meat of the meal. Superman is now John Kent, the son of Kal-El, and he's, I'm gonna say, out of his depth, because things are moving and happening around him in ways that he, honestly, I don't even believe understands. I don't even believe he even grasps the magnitude of half the stuff that's going on around him. And I don't know, he's got this giant sea monster that's come up from the floor because somebody, quote unquote, sucked all the oxygen out of the water down there. Who could that have been? And it's heading towards Metropolis, and then these jerks from Gamora, not the one from Guardians of the Galaxy, but they pop up to fight this monster, and Aquaman and Superman are like, dog, what the heck? What are you doing? And these are the new Aquaman, the black one, and the new Superman, the sun one. So, there's lots of stuff going on, and I don't believe he's, frankly, at all equipped for it. I think he's at a distinct disadvantage based upon the fact that he doesn't have a large enough scope of vision. I honestly believe his father suffered from the same problem many times, and I think he kind of got his butt handed to him on this one. What do you think?
Yeah, you could tell he didn't know what to do, but I also felt like I'm feeling this is the first time since this book has come out where I kind of felt I feel like I really feel like the book has lost with these two issues, kind of lost its steam, and I think it's a problematic when you really start to see what it means to have the problematic choice of Gamora as your villain, right?
Yeah.
Or not as your villain, but as your site of villainy, and then of course that brings in Henry Bendix. The problem with Bendix is he is a Lex Luthor ripoff.
True.
And they're playing him like he's he's either Lex Luthor's equal or his superior, and that just doesn't work. Like the copy can't tell the original what to do.
That checks out. Yeah, because go ahead.
You add to it that we still remember, as much as I love John Kent as Superman, he hasn't quite separated himself from Clark Kent as Superman, and so it's kind of like it. So for the first time in his book, I actually felt like John Kent was the faux Superman, the copy Superman.
Okay.
And it comes down to, Lex Luthor's kind of in the background, Clark Kent's been kind of in the background, and now it's Clark Kent's son versus the fake Lex Luthor, right? It's just like the symmetry, I think that if he had gone up against a different villain, I wouldn't feel this way, but the contrast between Lex Luthor as the original and Henry Bendix as the copy was so high that it actually made me look at John Kent as a copy.
Wow.
And that's not good.
I agree. Henry Bendix, from his Wildstorm roots, as he wasn't always a villain. He became a villain throughout the story, and it
Yep.
was a logical fall for him there. But that was in the Wildstorm universe, where you got used to him and you had a whole experience with him. In DC, he's just this like, oh, it's another bald guy, and I guess you're
Yep.
supposed to be smart. He's not as smart as Luthor. He's not. But even a bootleg Lex Luthor with the real Lex Luthor is a lot of brains coming at this. And the
Right.
place where John Kent loses this battle is not on force. It's not on power. It's not on even accomplishing the original goal which you set out to do, which was to fix the actual problem. The problem is that he was outmaneuvered in the court of public opinion. That
Right.
he let the narrative be controlled by other people smarter than him, people better prepared than he is, and in doing so, kind of got his butt handed to him. And I've seen similar things happen to Clark Kent, but Clark had Lois, and Clark had Jimmy, and Clark had Perry, and Clark had the Truth, this kind of organization that they're setting up, that's kind of like a guerrilla blogger internet sort of thing that they're doing to try to say it's not as good. It's another knockoff. It's
Right.
no Daily Planet. So when you add three derivative things in at the same time, you're no longer eating gumbo or jambalaya. You're just eating stew, and
Right.
and that's not really as good.
I don't. I think we've gone from gumbo, jambalaya, stew to just muck.
Ooh, I don't know if I can't say it's that bad because what he did with Aquaman and the way they actually controlled the monster and saved as much of the day as they could, I think was actually rather clever. He
But I think
understands. Go
I
ahead.
think that also brings out how things could have been done, right? Like when you said Aquaman, the only character that I didn't feel like was a copy of someone else was Jason Hyde, and I'm like, but wait a second, he's a copy of Aquaman
Jackson Hyde.
or Jackson Hyde. I'm sorry, Jackson Hyde, and the fact that I did not think of Jackson Hyde as a copy of Aquaman when the argument could be made in the context of all these other copies tells me that this could have been done right.
Interesting. Okay.
Right? Like somehow he allowed Jackson to come out as his own individual, even with Aquaman still showing up at the very end,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But he couldn't do that for any of the other characters. And I gotta give you props for bringing up that like this whole thing with the Truth, right? Their like muckraking blog. Yeah, it's a bootleg Daily Planet, right? It's what the daily it's what's it's adroit in that it is the equivalent of what the newspaper was back when Superman first came out, because we're in this world where like we're being a journalist is a white collar job, but back in the 1930s, being a newspaper reporter was actually a very blue collar job.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, don't get me wrong. The fact that some of these people at the Truth have superpowers does offer different options. You see, Chaos Kitten and I can't pronounce the name of the other one from the Revolutionaries who were in Tom Taylor's Suicide Squad run. And they're great, and I'm happy to see them here, or at least they were in the previous issue, not this issue. I'm happy to see the idea of them here, but the application herein, as noted, is a bootleg Daily Planet, and it's not getting the job done.
And you know what I think is kind of frustrating is that it didn't have to be a bootleg Daily Planet.
Yeah.
Imagine if instead of approaching it as, oh, this is just, as opposed to drawing the parallels between it and the Daily Planet, it said, oh, what happens when where they really shined a light on the intriguing possibilities of what happens when you have superheroes tied to that type of apparatus.
Yeah.
Right? So basically what you have superheroes that are trying to win on the battlefield and the court of public opinion at the same time by controlling the press. That's an amazing concept.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually conceptually very strong. And don't get me wrong, I believe that Tom Taylor has the ability in time to do something with that. I just don't believe in this specific issue that he's spinning a lot of plates. He's got a lot of books going on right now with Dark Knights of Steel and with Nightwing and other things. There's a lot of stuff going on. Maybe he just dropped the ball on this one. I don't know.
I think he did. It wasn't, it wasn't terrible, but it just, it. I expect more. I expect more from this book, from this comic, because of what he's done in the past issues.
That's fair. I would personally give this a honorable mention. What are your thoughts?
I'll give it an honorable mention because it wasn't, like I said, if I wasn't thinking of what I've seen in the other issues, I would probably think a little better of this.
Indeed. All right. Well, this is Comic Books This Week with Dr. Stanford Carpenter and myself, Hannibal Tabu. We've talked about Superman, son of Kal-El, 8 and partially 7. What would we like to get into next?
Let's do Black Manta, father of Aquaman.
Man, look, man. I really want to like this book because I love Chuck. I do. I really want to like this book. And it's got so many wonderful little dialogue moments and character moments. But, so, what happened here, Stanford?
Sometimes, sometimes 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 the sum of the parts are greater, and sometimes the sum of the parts are lesser. And I think that's what happened with this one. It had a lot of great parts, but I also felt there was some stuff that didn't work well together. Like, I don't think it was a good art choice. I liked the art. I actually like that minimalist kind of art, right? But I don't think it was the right choice for this, and it definitely wasn't the right choice for Underwater Adventures. They're just, I think doing Underwater Adventures requires I think that there are very few artists who can do a really good Underwater Adventures, right?
True. It's difficult. It get murky, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm saying some of the best artists out there can't do an underwater adventure, and some of the ones that you just think, you're sticking with an underwater adventure, like, oh my goodness, right?
Yeah.
I think I think it was hampered by that too. I think that this just needed a different. I don't even want to blame the writer, and I don't want to blame the artist. I want to blame the editor.
Oh, okay.
I think that this is something where better editorial decisions around this book and this concept would have given us something amazing.
Indeed. Okay.
And I felt like it was tripping over. I think that's what it was tripping over, because, like, I really liked this idea of, like, essentially, Revenge of the Minion, right? That's what we end on. That was an amazing idea. I love the whole idea of, like, Black Manta seeing what would be the last letter that Black Manta would write to Jackson, right? Mm-hmm. And then realizing that, he may not be able to figure out how to make things right with his son. He still loves his son, though, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that he doesn't have somebody who he thinks can pick up his legacy. I think that this whole idea of essentially an Atlantean maroon population, I think that's amazing as well. Again, it somehow it didn't come out in the sauce.
Yeah, and that's exactly the thing, that while the idea of Revenge of the Minions has its possibilities, Devil Ray is not a compelling antagonist. He's barely a knockoff Black Manta in and of himself. And in his overly derivative stuff, he never does anything to distinguish himself from the same modus operandi. Black Manta exists to get revenge on somebody for something that happened in the past. Devil Ray exists to get revenge on somebody for something that happened in the past. They use a similar color scheme. They use a similar motif. They have a similar visual design. They have a similar modus operandi. They have similar operating theaters. All of it's the same. And there's nothing to make me say, oh, Devil Ray is this. He's this thing. In the same way, there were a lot of missed opportunities. You had Dr. Mist here, an immortal black guy, and did very little with him. Very little. That was very disappointing. This female kind of catalyst character that rolls with Gallus the Goat, I believe she was called.
Yeah.
That rolls with Black Manta. Gets a couple of little cute one-liners, but doesn't really have a strong effect on the plot either. just overall, I feel like there were all these great pieces laid out for this meal, and it's undercooked.
Right. Right. And like I said, I think the writer did his job. I think the artist did his job, and I feel like the editor just didn't 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 make the tough decisions that needed to be made to make this a good book.
I can dig that. All right. For me, this would be a meh. What are you going to rate it as?
I'm gonna. Oh God. I don't want to do. I don't want to do Black Manta dirty. That's the problem, right? I don't want to do him dirty, but
He's not going to come to your house. You're too far inland.
oh God, I'm gonna give him the weakest honorable mention I can.
Okay. All right. That's comic books this week. Compromising when you got to, I guess. With Dr. Stanford
Oh
Carpenter
wow,
and Hannibal Tabu.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist that one. You were just wide open. I couldn't resist it.
Well, I'm gonna go out on a limb on this last DC book,
Okay.
Justice League Annual 2022.
All right. What's the limb you're going out on here?
I liked it.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, not like that, but like for real. Why?
I felt like. Oh, first of all, I felt like Sanford Green brought something to this in the artwork. He brought something to it that 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 helped me, and also in his storytelling. I mean, so I'm very fascinated by Sanford Green's work because I feel like like he is an artist that has the capacity to do some of the most amazing work, but he can very easily be killed by the wrong inker or the wrong colorer.
Okay.
And I think it's because he does a lot. There's just a lot of like grindy pencil work in in what he does, and if you don't ink it properly, and if you don't use the colors properly to help separate things out, the whole the overall impression can be very muddy, right?
Yes.
So I've seen inkers and I've seen colorists just brutalize his pencils. I felt like that didn't happen in this one, right?
Okay. That's fair.
But what I liked about it, and this goes back to my critique of the previous Justice Leagues, is that, when the superheroes stood up next to each other, you could tell that so and so had a different kind of visual, a physical presence, right?
Okay. Fair.
That's very important to a Justice League book because you can't have Black Adam and the Flash be interchangeable from a distance.
Fair.
So I felt like he did a really good job with that. I think that I'm going to have to go out on a limb again and give some props to Bendis. I think he made some really interesting choices. I think that having Omac in this was a really good choice. I think Omac is a really interesting character. You don't, and if you can bring even just a little bit of Omac's role with him, which is what they did when he time traveled, it provides a really nice narrative contrast as far as like pieces in the world building, right?
Okay.
I think that Omac is one of Kirby's more interesting concepts. And but I don't think it's really been properly developed. I think so having Omac show up, I thought was really cool. So it's like I felt like in this one, Bendis actually had the supporting cast on the creative side to do something really good with one of his stories. And
Okay.
I think that's been at the heart of my critique of his Justice League, right? And your critique, right? It's like, like the dialogue, you can't tell who's talking sometimes, right? Because anybody would have said that. Stuff like that. I mean, and I'm just thinking from previous reviews, but like once you start bringing together these other elements, and once you start having a little higher contrast and sort of the narrative world building elements, it smooths those issues over, I think. I thought that this was also very much a classic Justice League story where, oh, look, something happens and the Justice League has to break off into a whole bunch of small teams. So that it was nice to get away from the we're gonna have this story where you've got 8 different characters interacting with one another at the same time, right? They did. I like how they did the whole thing. Everyone just kind of broke off, and we have groups of four. I liked that, and I also liked what they did with the villain. Like I thought it was really cool. This idea of a time traveling villain where you're dealing with different versions of him in different times at the same time. That's something that we don't see. I haven't seen being done enough with time travel characters, and that doing that with this time travel character, it actually made the plot much more interesting
Huh.
than it otherwise could have been.
Huh. Well, you have a very different perspective on this book than I did. Many things.
Oh, come on,
First
come
of
on!
all,
You can talk about how you loved this one.
First of all, when they're talking about, okay, here's Omak and he's powered by Brother Eye, and Batman's like, Brother Eye, wonder what that is. I've never heard of that. I'm like, I'm sorry, wait, stop the book. Batman literally had a whole thing with Brother Eye where he empowered it and almost murdered everybody, and they play out more of that storyline in Batman Beyond, which is also in continuity. So the fact that he's starting out the book saying, gee, I don't know what that is. It's like, when the crook is like walking along with the cop, like, gee, this crime is a head scratcher, huh? I don't know what happened here. I'm like, fam, what? How dare you, sir? How dare you? So that's where I started. Second, with the thing with the so-called villain, Epoch, that we see in multiple different forms and multiple different time zones, we just saw a fantastic, no pun intended, Kang story in the Fantastic Four Annual, where Reed Richards sneaks in as a fake Kang because they've got the same DNA, and they all compare their Kangly adventures, and it turns out to be like a real twist of fate. So I've seen a recent thing where I've had multiple versions of a single character through time travel do some really amazing story things, and this did not connect the same way because when I look at this, I'm seeing that they're trying to use Hawkwoman as a through line, and the way that she, hopefully no spoiler, ended up as a major Deus Ex Machina at the end, I had a problem with. Bendis has been doing this thing, especially with the Legion and with some of the stuff, where he tries to storytell through illusion. Like, oh, I'm going to drop this little tidbit about something that hasn't actually happened in the story because it's relevant. Oh, but I don't know what that was. Now, some people say, oh, it's like when George Lucas mentioned the Clone Wars in A New Hope. If you plan to pay off, because the Clone Wars paid off in a big way. Now, does the idea of Queen Naomi paying off when, honestly, I still don't know what her powers do. Not from the TV show, not from the comics, I don't know what her powers do. So I don't think that those kind of tidbits and, this kind of, oh, well, I guess I can't tell you about this really cool thing I just said. Oh, what, you said a really cool thing? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really here for it. And from what you said about the dialogue complaint, there's a whole bunch of panels on, I believe it's page 9 or 10, where OMAC is in the picture. And there's dialogue buttons that come in the other side, right? Should we call a doctor? Like a medical doctor, not a fate doctor. Who said that? You don't know. I don't know. And then, honestly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who said it. So when I look at things like that, all of my regular complaints maintain. I do agree with you that Stanford made some fantastic visual choices. Sanford rather. Ooh, look at me, I'm all confused. Sanford made some, I'm sure you make good visual choices too, but Sanford made some great visual choices here that really communicated well. I think he did a yeoman's work in carrying the water on this, but yeah, I'm not feeling it the same way. I feel like that this was an extended trailer for the Justice League Legion thing that comes on, and that's not the same thing as a story, especially because I don't really believe anything was actually resolved here with Epoch, with Hawkwoman, with any of that. I just think, all right, there was some great, as always, some great cute little dialogue moments, but yeah, this isn't connecting for me, man.
Okay.
Even bringing in John Kent, who was cool. He was cool and different from his father.
Again, I'm gonna say I'm gonna stick to my guns here. Like this was the best. This was the best Bendis Justice League that we've seen.
I won't argue, but I'd say that's damned by faint praise.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I was surprised. I was surprised that I was enjoying this because I mean, Justice League has been a rough ride.
Yeah.
Even though it's got a configuration that gives me some of my favorite characters, and I love what they're doing with Black Adam, but you got to do more than that. So I guess it's time to leave DC Comics behind.
We gotta give
You
this
know,
some rating before we go. This is for me
although
an honorable mention.
yeah, I'm gonna give it an honorable mention. I'm gonna give it a high honorable mention.
Ooh.
I'm gonna
All right, Paul
you
Abdul.
know, well, well, it's time for us to leave Batman comics behind. I mean DC Comics.
Noise.
And let's head over to let's head over to the House of Marvel.
The Mouse House of Ideas. All right.
The let's start with Amazing Spider-Man 88, bringing us back the Slingers.
I see what's happening here because I have to admit I have some inside information. Jeffrey Thorne has been in love with the Prowler for a long time. He's wanted to do a Prowler story, a Hobie Brown story for a long, long time. He's had all these and I see every hint of every idea that he's ever had sneaking into this. So that's fun for me, and I enjoy that. And that's okay. I'll do it. I'll get it. Cool. So that's cool. But there are, for me, a number of other concerns that I would have with this. That the Beyond Corporation is being built up. And I don't believe the way it's being built up makes a lot of sense. So that's a little frustrating for me. It's vague. So, for example, okay, let me think. When we think of Gamora, for example, let's bring them back. Gamora's been built up as a supervillain nation for years. We also have, companies like Oscorp. I just say the name and you think, ugh, but why Beyond is evil and what they're doing evil, you're not really sure. It's like they slipped you a Mickey and maybe they're feeling you up. Maybe it's just the booze working. You don't know. And that kind of vagueness, I believe, is a deficit here. I don't believe that necessarily has to do with the story specifically. I believe that has to do with editorial dictates that have to do with how they're building up Beyond, because I'm seeing it in not just this issue, but multiple issues. So that's my first concern. That said, I do enjoy seeing these characters get new spins. Hobie Brown has never been smarter than this. He's amazing. He's like, oh, you flipped the thermostat? And I'm like, oh, okay, Hobie, break some science down. Talk nerdy to me. I love it. But yeah, I believe that there are constraints outside of the pages of this individual issue that limit its abilities.
Well, this one thing about this issue that struck me was, remember a couple months ago when we were talking about this same book, Spider-Man, about how one of the best issues of the Spider-Man run was actually a Mary Jane story.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
And so I'll say that this issue is tied with that Mary Jane story for being one of the best stories of this run.
Agreed.
And this particular story, I don't recall seeing Spider-Man, and it was really about another group of people.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's something about that is.
Not
it's like
amazing?
the fact that I like it is pretty damning.
Yeah.
As far as the entire book, that somehow this book is most interesting when Spider-Man's not there.
Ow. That leaves a mark. Yeah,
And
I
that-
can argue that. Yeah.
And that tells me something about that's something where I gotta look at editorial.
Yeah.
That somehow they've created some sort of narrative arc that works better without the main character being around. So at that point, it tells me that this entire storyline, right? It's a great storyline, but it should not be a Spider-Man storyline.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. If you take Spider-Man out of the center of it, wow. Now that you say it out loud, I'm like, you plug Spider-Man out, you plug in somebody new. Yes, that does work better. If they made their own corporate hero, oh my God, that would work so much better. Because you don't have any of the baggage of Spider-Man. Oh my God, that would work better.
And then you bring in all these other like B and C list heroes to interact with them who are also getting sucked in, right?
Yes.
But the problem is, it's like, and because here's the thing.
Uh-huh.
I think at some level they realized that Peter Parker would never do this,
No.
right? So what do? They do the next best thing. They put him in a coma, right? It's kind of like, it's like, oh wait, Peter. I see him like, oh, this is a cool story, but Peter Parker would never do this. Well, let's put him in a coma and let's bring back the clone, because the clone, he has no personality anyway. We can have him do whatever we want. Okay, cool. So now we got Spider-Man working for the Beyond Corporation. Nah, this is shit. You know what would be really interesting, even more interesting in all this? What if they stole the Spider-Man identity, right? And maybe they put in a B-list character pretending to be Spider-Man. That would have been more interesting. But the whole idea of going to a clone that you assume has a lot of the characteristics of Peter Parker just doubles down on the fact that it makes no sense that he'd be doing this.
I think we really are coming hard at bootlegs this week, and I think it's the right call. Yeah.
Well, and normally I don't have a problem with legacy characters, but I feel like the problem here is, from the very beginning they knew that this was not a viable Spider-Man story, and so they shoehorned Spider-Man's clone into it, thinking that they can make the clone different enough to get us to come in and go with it. I think I actually, ironically, I think that this would work better as a Miles Morales Spider-Man story than it would a Peter Parker or even his clone Spider-Man story, because there's just too much age and maturity in either of those characters for us to believe that they would be falling for this.
Especially given the reveal at the end. Yeah. That's actually a really savvy point, because be it Ben Reilly or Henry Bendix or the knockoff Kronos that we saw in the Justice League book. There's just it's a difference between being a legacy and being a derivative, and
right.
The derivative part is where it gets bad. The legacy is not necessarily it. You can pass the mantle, but you got to pass the mantle distinctively. Jaime Reyes is a completely different dude than Ted Kord or Dan Garrett. And that's intentional, right. And that's a great choice. So.
Exactly, and I think that this is the problem with this book. I actually think that I'm going to be honest. I think that this storyline would actually make for a great Marvel crossover.
Oh, I see where you're going. Oh, I do see that. Oh, that would be a good idea. But
right? It would have. Yeah, this would have been the great Marvel crossover. Because corporations are that slippery, and they have that many tentacles,
yeah.
And you can have everybody kind of coming at this corporation from different perspectives. You can see it from the hero's perspective, the villain's perspective. It creates a really interesting landscape. You can and it also allows you to work in your critiques of capitalism, or you could have one issue be a critique of capitalism, the next one being all about like big ups to capitalism, right? Like that's really interesting. I think that the Beyond Corporation idea is a great idea.
Well, it sounds like they need you in editorial, not what they got going on.
Well, but it's a great idea, but not for this. Not for Spider-Man.
I would give it a meh. It's because, especially with the ending, especially with the reveal at the end, I'm like, oh god, this is what you were setting me up for? Oh, this is not cool. Come on now. So yeah, this is gonna be a meh for me.
Mm-hmm. I'm torn, because I want to give it an honorable mention so that so that the Slingers characters can kind of get their due. Because again, I thought this was a.
You're right. Because of Hobie Brown, who has never been this smart, I will upgrade to honorable mention, because that man was entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, I can allow that.
So I'm going to give an honorable mention. I'm giving Slingers an honorable mention. I'm giving Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, a run for the hills for your life.
Not amazing.
Yeah.
This is Comic Books This Week with Dr. Stanford Carpenter and myself, Hannibal Tabu, the head comics reviewer at Bleeding Cool. We have gone through some DC and Marvel books. What is next on our Marvel stack?
All right, let's go to Devil's Reign.
The story that ceases to be a story once you cross the bridge into New Jersey.
You stole my line. You know what I'm gonna say? You know what this reminded me of?
What?
This reminded me of the movie Clockers,
Wow.
which I thought, which to this day I will say was basically the end of the urban gangster film.
Okay.
And the reason it was the end of the urban gangster film was how did it is what did it build up to? Everybody was you had everybody going up against each other. You had the sympathetic kid going up against the drug dealers getting ready to have the shootout, all that stuff. And that's how every one of the urban gang movies worked, right?
Yep.
And then at the very end there's this big shoot 'em up over the corner. And instead in this one, Pops slaps the kid across the face, gives him a wad of cash, and puts him on a bus and sends him to another city, and it's over, right? Like that. Like once that happened in a movie, you could never look at any of those movies the same way again because you're like, why don't they just get in the car and drive?
Yeah, basically.
Like nobody has to die, and all these people saying that they have to die are really saying I want to die.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is what I thought of when I read this. I'm like, okay,
Nice.
so superheroes are illegal in New York City. My first thought was Brooklyn. It's cheaper.
Is Brooklyn legally a different city?
Okay, maybe you have to go beyond Brooklyn. Okay, come to Albany. Go to Chicago. There are a lot of other cities,
You can
a
you
lot
can
of other
you can
places
work
to
out of
live.
Connecticut. You can even work.
Exactly. Like I'm just trying to figure out how this whole vigilant how this superheroes are illegal thing is a problem because
Yeah.
what you do is you just go and you like let New York you go over and you make sure all the other cities are like golden shining places on the hill and then let New York change its mind and let you back.
It's interesting you say that because my son was in a musical festival in New York several years ago, and we stayed in because the theater district is on the Lower West Side, and we stayed in a hotel in New Jersey across the river where we could see the theater. We could literally see the place where we were performing from our hotel room across the water. Uh, but and it was about a 45-minute ride with the train. And I'm sorry, we took the bus. Yeah, we took the bus underneath the tunnel into the city, right, to Penn Station and so on and so forth. But I can't fly and I don't have superpowers. But if I could see the Lower West Side from a hotel in Jersey, right? If I don't know, Luke Cage or I don't know, Cap, I've got access to his Quinjet. I'm like, there's a crime happening on the Lower West Side. I'm gonna run in. I'm gonna knock him in the face. And the second I cross the line into Jersey, they have no jurisdiction.
Exactly.
So I'm like, what are you gonna do? Because you know where I learned that? Not from Clockers, but from the Dukes of Hazzard. They were always running for the county line because they knew that Roscoe P. Coltrane couldn't cross it and couldn't enforce his stupid laws there. So
Yep.
when I looked at it that way, I was like, this is dumb, especially because you're talking about running Luke Cage for mayor. Okay, I get the idea that he's charismatic and people like him, but A, he's considered a felon, even though he was wrongfully convicted, true. But B, running for mayor costs a lot of money, and Luke Cage ain't got it. Luke Cage went to Latveria for $200.
Yep.
So
I mean,
when you look at the pieces, it's ridiculous, Stanford. It's
right.
ridiculous that Wilson Fisk, as the mayor of New York, could be considered to be this effective against people with this kind of power that have stood down Thanos, that have stood down Doctor Doom, that have stood down galaxy-ending threats. And it's like, really? Paperwork? Really?
Well,
Because remember Civil War? Okay, I gotta say this. Wilson Fisk's new legal challenge is a watered down version of the Superhero Registration Act from Civil War, which is a remixed version of the Mutant Registration Act from back in the X-Men thing. It's never worked. It never makes any sense. It always goes the exact same way, yet it keeps popping up. Kind of like Republicans. But anyway, ooh, I made myself sad there. But the difference being that all of those were national laws that you couldn't
right.
run to Jersey or you got to run to you got to run to what's the Mazatlan to get away from that joint. You got to get yourself in
Just go to
Ottawa.
Canada.
Yeah, exactly.
All I know is during Civil War, what did everyone do? They actually did just jump across to Canada, right?
Yeah.
Yet they can't figure out that you can leave New York City.
And that's the thing. Captain America led that battle. Captain America led that battle against this from
I mean,
Canada.
and let's take it one step further. Let's say you're Iron Man. Not
Let's
my
say it.
favorite, but let's say you're Iron Man.
Come on now.
What you do is you literally sit on the hotel and you shoot the bad guy with a repulsor ray across the river.
Because here's the better thing about Iron Man. Here's the better thing about Iron Man and Batman. Lots of people. Iron Man has the best possible superpower: money. So
Yep.
let's say that Iron Man. Oh, there's a crime happening up in Harlem. Oh, gee, I'm not allowed there. Oh, wait, hang on a second. I've got money, and I could hire private mercenaries who are good at clandestine ops and can appear and disappear and take care of stuff. Why don't I just do that and sit here chilling with my girl Pep? I ain't got to do nothing because I got money.
Yeah, and some of the stuff was also for me just I was like things like this whole thing with Matt Murdock's brother, right?
Oh God!
I'm
Don't
like,
even. That's so dumb. Don't get me started on that.
I mean, that would have been a great idea if it had been introduced into his canon a long time ago. Like that's a cool. I actually think it's a cool idea.
Oh,
but it's
no,
not
it's
a
not.
cool idea in this context.
You must not know how Matt Murdock got this brother.
Oh, I'm just saying what's a cool idea is the concept of having a brother that looks just like you. You're a superhero with a secret identity, and he's not.
Yes, but he's also a felon and a criminal and a murderer and kind of bad.
Again, I think that's a great. I think it's an interesting concept, but it's not working here. I
Also,
mean, I'll say the one thing that did work for me in this is I actually enjoyed seeing the Rhino.
you know what? The Rhino's kind of I'm not such a bad guy turn. I'm a fan of it. I am.
Yeah.
I will admit that. I will admit that you're right here, and I do enjoy that. But, and I have to stop and say this: the reason why Mike Murdock exists is because of a wish gone wrong that Matt Murdock made to accidentally make this twin brother that never actually existed actually exist.
Well, there you go, clouding the issue with facts.
It's terrible. I'm sorry. There's too many
it's
ridiculous elements here. Because
it's beyond terrible. Like I said, it's beyond. I said it's an interesting concept. At no point, and in fact, I've gone on my way to say it doesn't work here.
yeah.
And I think that this is a story and a concept that just doesn't work.
Let's also. There's another dumb thing. I'm sorry. There's so many things that bother me about this. I got to get into this. So, Wilson Fisk is trying to rig the election by weaponizing the powers of the Purple Man. Okay, sure, whatever. That's supervillainy, sure. And he's got his powers in a cane with a big jewel on it, right? And and all of this started because he realized he had a file with Daredevil's real name in it, and when he read it, it just was blank. He's like, but I know it's here. I know it, but why can't I? They did something to me. Superheroes. And that's how this all started, which is, again, dumb. But that's really overreacting when you just could shoot somebody. I'm just sorry. It is.
Right.
So when I looked at that, and then he realized that he had this, and he just told himself to remember, I was like, family, this is the dumbest joint. What are we doing? What are we doing here? What are we doing with our lives?
We are not using our life energy, our time on this earth in a manner that is befitting of what we should be about.
Yeah, I got to call this the lowest possible meh because it's not like it's not a pretty book. It is a very pretty book. I'm not going to deny that. And it's got some cute little moments of tension or whatever, but it doesn't make a lick of doggone sense. Not a lick of doggone sense.
I mean, this is what I think is interesting. Is I feel like this week has been a masterclass in bad editing.
Okay. All right. How would you rate it?
Because I agree with you. This is a pretty book.
Yeah. How would you rate it?
Meh.
Okay. So we can give it that. This is Comic Books This Week with Dr. Stanford Carpenter and myself, Hannibal Tabu. We have actually, I can go long. I ain't got to leave. We'll see what we can do. We got, I think you want to do Hawkeye next?
Yeah.
Okay. I really want them to succeed with this book, and I really see where they're trying to capture the charm of the kind of hapless Hawkeye from the TV show. I don't think they've quite got the voice right. I don't think they've quite got the vibe right. And it always seems to, like, when you're seeing a dance routine and the one person off to the right in the back is just a little bit offbeat, that's this book.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was really excited to read the book.
Mm-hmm.
I got a couple pages into the book, and I was like, how quickly can I get out of this book?
I wouldn't. Wow, that's worse than me. But all right.
Well, it's not. It's because nothing was happening. It's a beautiful book, actually, but really, what happened beyond page 4?
Le sucre de crème.
That was before page 4.
But le sucre de crème.
Meh.
I would agree, meh, on this one. I'm sorry. We can move on if you want. I don't need to go into that in any more detail.
All right. Moon Knight.
Moon Knight, a book that followed the Amazing Spider-Man formula with no Moon Knight in it at all.
I want to call this Hot Mess Night. And you know what's even worse about it?
What's that?
I do think this book is a hot mess, but I kind of enjoy it.
You're telling on yourself with a lot of your life here for Stanford. You are.
I mean, this is one of those books where there's so many there's so many elements that I want to like about it, and then I'm like, but but it all boils down to that old saying from the '80s: "Where's the beef?" Like there's like I feel like it's a book. It's the equivalent of empty calories.
Yeah, I don't really think anything happened here.
I think Hunter's Moon is an interesting character.
Mm-hmm.
I think Moon Knight has a lot of interesting elements. I think that all the shout outs to Egypt are interesting, but incredibly misguided.
Very insulting.
You know, and that's the thing. That's why I call it's like a hot mess. It's just everything about it is just all over the place. But it's also, I get the sense that it doesn't know what it wants to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's a problem.
It's gonna be on the low mess side for me, man.
I'm gonna give it a meh, a high meh. I think that Moon Knight for me is always been this character that can be great, but continues to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
I hard agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. We got one more Marvel book to go.
Yep.
But why do we have though?
Secret X-Men 0.
I love Bobby DaCosta. I do. He's adorable and he's hilarious. But he is driving down the wrong side of a one-way street here in the dark with his lights off here. And I just, I really thought that the X-Men were above getting played like suckers this way.
This is one secret that should have been kept to save me the horror.
Yeah.
They had characters. I mean, I like Bobby. I like Cannonball. I like Armor. I like the Shire. I like the Imperial Guard.
Oh, you go with Shire. I thought it was Shi'ar.
Or Shi'ar, I'm sorry. I don't know. When I was a kid, I used to call it Shire,
That's weird.
and then well, but the point is, it's got all these elements that I want to root for, and it didn't deliver on anything.
Yeah.
And the other book that was like that I forgot to put on my list, New Mutants.
Yeah, New Mutants was, especially when she said, we really need something like a language. I'm like, y'all speak Krakoan. That was when people don't read their own books to understand their own stuff, it really bothers me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one book that I haven't really gotten around to reading that I'm curious to see how they're going to screw up is the whole like the Wolverine, the 10 Deaths of Wolverine.
Skip it.
Book. Yeah.
I read it. Skip it.
Okay, thank you for saving me some of my life.
That's the gig.
Well, let's get the hell out of the House of Marvel.
Slam the front door.
All right, let's hit the independent comics.
I'm gonna
Seven
start with
se-
one because you
Okay,
read one that I wouldn't have nothing to do with. Because I'm from Memphis. So
okay.
I'm gonna let you go and get that one out the way. I'm gonna just sit here and sip my tea.
What?
Of the three indie books, which book would I not read being from Memphis?
Seven Secrets,
No, you
number
clown
14.
redneck. Read no redneck book. Got to be out your mind.
I read that, and I'm like, oh, it's like monsters. And I mean, look, I'm gonna. This is what I could say really great about this book, right? Is that it is an exercise in truth in advertising.
Ooh,
It is everything it says it's going to be.
I don't want
Everything it
any of
says
that.
it's going
I
to
don't want
be.
any of that.
But it's everything it says it's going to be. And you know what? In this day and age, I mean, you could judge this book by its cover. How often do you get that?
Not a compliment. Not a compliment. Okay. Just what's your rating and let's move on because we're trying to make this happen.
I'm going to give it a meh. It's just, I mean, I saw this book. I looked at the title. I was like, oh, there's got to be. I'm thinking there's got to be some sort of trick here.
Nope.
There's got to be some sort of irony here. And
Nope.
I'm like, no, it's exactly what it's exactly what it is. It it's like I can't be mad because it didn't okey doke me on anything. The only okey doke was it was exactly what it says it was going to be.
I
It's
love
like, hey, this book's gonna suck. Read it. Well, I read it. You told me it was gonna suck, and it sucked. So, how could I complain? How can I say anything bad about that? Right? Didn't lie to me. Didn't pull the wool over my eyes. It is exactly what it said it was going to be. It was exactly what it said it was going to be on the cover. The art was competent, and the storytelling was competent. The story was exactly what it said it was going to be. The characters were exactly what as advertised. Like this was stunning, just utterly stunning in its ability to adhere to its concept. You got to give someone a little bit of props for that.
No, I don't.
But but damn.
I love that you're like Michael Bluth in Arrested Development. Like, I don't know what I thought was going to happen here.
I'm like, there has to be a trick here. There has to be. Nope.
This is the most entertaining you've ever been. Oh my God. I love it. Okay, this is Comic Books This Week. Oh gosh, with Dr. Stanford Carpenter, apparently a comedian now, and myself, Hannibal Tabu, head comics reviewer at Bleeding Cool. Let's bring it on home. We got two more books. What are we gonna do?
Seven Secrets number 14.
Okay. You know I loved Seven Secrets when it came out.
Yeah.
What is happening? What's going on right now? Dude can fly
I have
and what and what?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think this book has gone off the rails. And not like well, let me put it this way. It's not redneck bad, It's not it's not Secret X-Men bad, But there are drastic problems here in terms of clarity. And I want to point out, this is another Tom Taylor book. I think the man may have too much on his plate.
Okay.
He may be a victim of his own success.
Well, yeah. I mean, I actually found Seven Secrets number 14 to be unreadable.
Wow, that's a lot. That's worse than me. Wow, you coming in hard. Okay.
I'm like, look at this. And I'm just flipping through the pages. I'm like, oh, okay. It didn't hold me at all, even though it had a lot of good parts to it.
Mm-hmm. I love the apology part. That was really good.
Yeah, I just think they need. I think that this book needs a hiatus. A
Well,
hiatus and a reboot.
what I also think would help this book, and this is because there's a lot of players. If they would do character captions, I think that would help a lot. Where you put character name, three words about that character.
Oh yeah, just a good old fashioned Legion roll call.
Yeah, just hit me off with what's going on here. What's this guy got going on? What's she doing? What's that about? Give me some because while I kind of remember Kanto, and I know Kanto had a very big thing happen, but I don't really get Kanto. I didn't really get Kanto in the first place. I'm like, why are you wearing a mask? What's this about? What's your deal? And I
I
still
think
don't 100% know.
I think one of the most important. I think I really really enjoy previouslys
Oh yeah.
when they're
Oh
done
yeah.
well. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, and that's and I'm gonna say this, like one of the things that one of the things that strikes me about New Mutants, and it happened because I was reading the book and my partner was like, hey, tell me about this book. It looks is it interesting? I'm like, I did not hesitate. I didn't think it through. I said the problem with this book is that the previously does a better job of telling the story than the story does.
Yep.
So I feel like what's happening is that I'm really just reading this issue for the previously to tell me what happened last issue.
That's when I say that it's that some books make a better wiki entry than they make comic books.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's also means that something's falling down in the writing. It's not that the writing's bad. It's just not coming together.
Yeah.
Again, we're back to our whole issue of this week being a masterclass in editorial mistakes.
Yes, sir. Wow. Yeah, I want Seven Secrets to succeed because but we're starting. You remember early on in my reviews, I said I'm okay if we never find out what the secrets are. We're finding
Yeah.
out what the secrets are, and it's not working.
Right.
The thing
Yep.
I was worried about, I was right. Nobody needs to ever learn the secrets.
Right.
But I think by the end of this book, we'll see them all, and they almost cannot live up to the hype.
See, this is one. Yeah, you're right. I think this is one of those books where you only wanted to learn about one or two, just enough so that you'd be afraid of the remaining five.
Yeah. And then at all costs, you have to keep everybody from learning those. Yeah. But, yeah, because we're up to three now, 3 or 4 almost, I think. So.
Yep. And I guess this brings us to our last of the indies.
Oh, we didn't rate it, though. We got to rate it.
Meh.
Sorry to say. I agree. Meh. We didn't have a buy yet, so. Wow, that's rough. Rough week.
Oh, we had an honorable mention.
That's cute, but that ain't money.
Cult of Icarus #1.
Cult of Icarus #1. What'd you think about that?
When I opened it, my first thought was, oh my God, Michael Golden didn't die.
Wow. I love Michael Golden.
I loved the art in this.
It is pretty, yeah.
And it so made me think of. It's not that I think it looks just like Michael Golden, but there's something. But it's close. But you could see the influence.
Yes.
But it really made me think of. It made me think of the first issue of the Micronauts.
Wow. I loved Micronauts.
Yep.
Wow. It's interesting you say those things because this book did not make me feel as good as those things at all. But I do see what you're talking about.
No, the art did. The story did for the first 6 pages. Mm-hmm. And then she went to the bathroom.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of high fidelity meets almost Terminator vibe, especially given what the actual threat is, which is the easiest way to make me tune out of a book, seeing those types of characters.
Well, it's basically this is one thing I think is interesting about it, right? Mm-hmm. Is it's basically a better version of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
That's really damn by faint praise, especially these days.
I'm talking about the Buffy the Vampire Slayer comic.
Yeah.
I've always felt like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer comic had just like I've enjoyed it, but I thought it just had a little bit of trouble finishing, right?
Absolutely.
What I think is interesting is we're introduced to her. We meet this guy who we think is really her long-lost father, but we don't really know for sure. But I think we're going to find out that he is. And
I think we're going to find out that he's not. I think it's going to be like the Blacklist. Yeah. I think it's like Red Reddington.
Okay. Well, but the point is that they're setting them up in a relationship similar to Buffy and Giles and Giles, right? And I could see it. But it's being done. It's actually being done for our time, right?
Yeah.
And I thought this is interesting. Then she went to the bathroom. And
That
then the
bothers you.
vampires followed her there. And no, it's just that was the moment when everything just took this turn to the less interesting.
That is on page 9, 10, 11, 12. Page 12. Yeah.
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 Because up until then, it was pretty open ended as to what the villain really would turn out to be.
Yeah.
And I admit that I'm really not. I mean, vampires don't.
Boring.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's really hard to pull off vampires and make them interesting because there's
yeah,
nothing new that happened in this vampire presentation here.
right.
And that's
But the art was so pretty.
yeah.
The
I've had
art
lots
was
of
just
pretty
like,
dates that have not gone anywhere. Yeah, I appreciate what they were trying to do here. I didn't need another Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I didn't need the Buffy the Vampire Slayer I had the first time. Honestly, if we could have stopped Whedon before he became what he was, a lot of people wouldn't have been harmed. So I don't know. I just for me it's gonna be a meh. It's gonna be a meh for me.
yeah, I gotta give it a meh as well. I so didn't want to though when I saw that art.
Sorry,
I
man.
wanted to love this book.
But just think about that image on the toilet. That's where it's all going. Yeah. So.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a rough week, man, because I didn't see anything that I would like out and out be like, yo, I got to get that. Well,
Right.
let me hang on. Let me quickly look at my notes and see if I've missed anything because my brain is like, wow, this does seem like a rough as heck week. Nope. Yep. Nothing. Because I read Star Wars Darth Vader number 20, which has some cute plot elements, but is not really, it's another book where it's like, oh, Vader's on the side. Oh, okay, I guess whatever. I can't see anything that I would out recommend people go out and buy.
Yeah.
Rough. Anyway, we'll try again next week. Maybe Black Love Day will be a inspiration for people to come out with some lovely books. On the 13th. We want to thank you for listening. We know that you have other places you could be and other things you could do, so we appreciate you listening to us for this time. We will be back hopefully next Friday. If life doesn't happen to us, stuff happens, but And I'm going to toss these reviews on YouTube, this recording, as soon as I humanly can. Any last thoughts, any considerations other than perhaps some editorial training that people need there, Stanford?
Nope. I think I left it all out of the field on this one.
Love it. Definitely. Left it all out in the field and made other people pick it. So, that seemed weird. Anyway, all right, I'm going to go grab myself a bite to eat because I eat late lunches and that's what I do. But thank you for joining us. This has been Comic Books This Week with Dr. Stanford Carpenter and myself. Please follow us on It's Complicated on Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, and Facebook. And the It's Complicated house is above your head to be notified of all of our events here on Clubhouse. Thank you so much. And I think that's all we got to do, right, Stanford?
Yep.
Cool. See you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Have a good one.
All right, be safe.